Ukraine just used its F-16s in one of its boldest moves yet. For months, these US-made jets were focused on defense, taking down Russian drones and missiles. Now, Ukraine is shifting gears, hitting back with precision. A frontline F-16 pilot has just revealed how these new strike missions are unfolding and why Russia should be getting nervous. The details are rare, but the message is clear. Ukraine's air game just leveled up. On March 27th, the Kyiv Post published a report on what it calls the first state-run interview with a Ukrainian F-16 pilot. The pilot, whose face is covered by a mask that also helps to obscure his voice, likely to prevent any chance of identification, offered details about the daring raids Ukraine has been conducting with its US-made fighter jets. Right now, the pilot confirms Ukraine is using those jets for two major attacking operations, carrying out strike missions every day and conducting sorties with other pilots. The pilot provides few details about the strike missions. That shouldn't come as a surprise. Ukraine doesn't want to give away exactly what it's doing for fear of providing Russia with intelligence it can use to defend the targets Ukraine is hitting. However, the pilot does reveal that Ukraine has something that Putin hoped it wouldn't have: vast intelligence about its Russian targets. "We know our targets in advance. Our intelligence is working quite well, despite media claims that we do not receive intelligence data," the unnamed pilot said. He may be referring to the temporary suspension of military intelligence sharing that US President Donald Trump implemented against Ukraine in early March with this comment. That suspension, which was likely a ploy to place pressure on Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky to push forward with ceasefire negotiations, only lasted a few days before it was lifted. Right now, it seems like there are no problems with the flow of information to Ukraine's F-16 pilots. "One could say our intelligence forces adapt very quickly, and we receive up-to-date information," the pilot adds. That intelligence is aiding Ukraine in its assault on Russian targets. The pilot also confirmed that his jet's loadout was more than up to the task. "Almost every missile hits its target," the pilot claims. "More than 80% of the missiles we launch reach their targets, destroying Shahid drones and cruise missiles launched from the sea, air, and land." That comment perhaps provides us with some clues about the types of targets that are in Ukraine's F-16 crosshairs. Shahid drones are an especially important target. In September 2024, Ukraine said that Russia had launched a staggering 8,060 of these drones at Ukrainian positions since the beginning of Putin's invasion in February 2022. These drones, which are manufactured in Iran, are becoming an increasingly worrying problem for Ukraine. In February 2025, the Kyiv Independent reported that Russia has been modifying these drones to make them an even more potent attacking force. In particular, the Shahid 136, which is now one of Russia's main strike drones, has been upgraded so that it now carries a 198-pound warhead. Previously, it was limited to 110 pounds, meaning Russia has found a way to almost double the destructive force of these terrifying drones. The downside, from the Russian perspective, is that the heavier weight also means the upgraded Shahid drones can't travel as far as their previous iteration. Their range has fallen from 839 miles to 404 miles. That limits the number of targets Russia can hit with the new drones, though that limitation is a trade-off for the increased power of each successful strike. Ukraine understands this. It knows that Russia can still send Shahids from behind the front lines that are capable of reaching targets in the Donbas region. From the pilot's claims, it seems like Ukraine's most recent raids focus on pulling double duty when it comes to dealing with the drones. On the defensive front, the F-16 pilots are shooting these drones out of the skies. The odds are that Ukraine is also using its F-16s to conduct ground raids against Russian storage facilities, to take out as many of these drones as possible before they take to the skies. Then there are the sorties. Sortie is a general term that covers practically any mission carried out by an air force. Previously, Ukraine was limited in the types of sorties it could carry out. That's demonstrated by the F-16 pilot's description of the types of jets he's accompanying on his missions: MiG-29s, Su-24s, Su-25s, and Su-27s. All are Soviet-era aircraft made in Russia. And while those aircraft still present a solid threat, they're old enough and well-known enough inside the Russian military that they can be countered. Take the MiG-29 as an example. The jet was introduced in the 1970s specifically as a counter to America's then-new F-16s. And in fairness, the two jets stack up fairly well against one another. The F-16 is a little shorter than the MiG-29, measuring 49 feet and 5 inches long, with a wingspan of 32 feet and 8 inches. The MiG-29 is around 57 feet long, with a wingspan that's 4 feet wider than the F-16's. That gives the F-16 an advantage. It's harder to spot on radars and more maneuverable in tight quarters. That shorter size also gives the F-16 a lower weight, 19,700 pounds versus the MiG-29's 24,250 pounds, which allows it to travel for a maximum range of 2,000 miles. The MiG-29, on the other hand, has a maximum range of 1,300 nautical miles. The only thing the MiG-29 has over the F-16, according to /Gear, is that it can hit a slightly higher service ceiling. We get more details about the differences from a 2023 Newsweek article. The outlet interviewed a pilot who'd flown both at a time when Ukraine's allies were still debating whether to send the F-16s to Ukraine at all. That pilot, who's a former member of the Polish Air Force, called the MiG-29 a ghost of a past era before adding, "I wouldn't want to fly that jet in real combat. I could just talk all day about the advantages of the F-16 over the MiG-29, but I think it's not fair because those are two different leagues nowadays," the pilot added. Small differences make a big impact, according to the Polish pilot. For instance, the F-16's cockpit is smaller than the MiG-29's, but it's designed in such a way as to be perfectly comfortable for the pilot. The element of design simply did not exist in the MiG-29, the pilot claims. The F-16 also offers greater visibility than the MiG-29 thanks in large part to its bubble canopy that allows an F-16's pilot to see behind themselves, which isn't a feature in the MiG-29. The Polish pilot also points out that the sheer amount of data an F-16 pilot receives is leagues ahead of what a MiG-29 pilot gets. With the latter, you are dependent on ground controllers to find the adversary, with the MiG-29's radar also being so outdated that it could only track one target at a time. Don't get me wrong, it was a great pleasure to fly a MiG-29, the pilot concludes. However, its time has passed. Specifically, he points out that the MiG-29 has limited air-to-ground capabilities, which isn't a problem with the F-16s. Why does all of this matter in the context of the daring raids Ukraine is now pulling off in its combined sorties? Simple, the F-16 delivers a far more advanced aircraft to Ukraine. The MiG-29s, along with the Su variants the F-16s are flying out with, have limitations that have prevented them from making a true impact against Russia during the war. With an F-16 backing them up, these aircraft become more effective. During sorties, the F-16 can act almost like an early warning system for the rest of the jets due to its superior threat detection capabilities. It also has a more potent attacking threat, thanks to its versatile ability to hit targets on the ground or in the air. The result is that it's now less risky for Ukraine to use the Soviet-era jets that make up most of its fighter stock, which opens the door for new types of strikes against Russia. And that brings us to a question. Just what does the F-16 deliver to Ukraine on both the attacking and defensive fronts? Euromaidan Press provides the details in a March 25th article heralding the arrival of new F-16s in Ukraine. On the defensive front, the F-16 delivers precisely what the Ukrainian fighter pilot says it does, the ability to shoot down cruise missiles and drones. That was exemplified in January 2025, when a Ukrainian pilot managed to shoot down 6 Russian cruise missiles in a single mission. The feat was so impressive that Ukrainian Air Force Command spokesperson Yuri Inat said, "They say that even Americans couldn't believe you did it," when speaking to the pilot who completed the mission. It's in these defensive capabilities that we see just how far ahead of the Soviet-era jets the F-16 really is. Before the US-made fighters arrived, Ukraine had to rely on its MiG-29s and Su-27s to counter Russia's constant missile and bomb threat. We already know why that wasn't the greatest idea thanks to our earlier exploration of the F-16's superior visibility compared to those Soviet-era jets. The F-16, with its advanced radar systems and missile capabilities, is far more effective in this role, Euromaidan Press points out. Speaking of missile capabilities, the F-16 delivers a trio of them when it has a defensive loadout. The AIM-120C, AIM-9M, and AIM-9X. All three are air-to-air missiles capable of taking out incoming Russian cruise missiles and drones. The AIM-120C is a 12-foot missile that travels at speeds of up to Mach 4 and can reach a maximum altitude of 100,000 feet. Compare that to the Shahid drones we mentioned earlier, which even in their earlier iteration were still far below reaching Mach 1. And it's easy to see why these missiles are so impactful. The AIM-120C also has a maximum range of 50 miles, meaning a Ukrainian F-16 pilot can stay a safe distance from an incoming cruise missile or drone while still scoring a direct hit. The AIM-120C is actually a third variant of the standard AIM-120, delivering a large motor rocket that gives it a greater range and makes it faster than the AIM-120A and AIM-120B that came before. Add improved guidance systems to the mix and you get an extremely capable missile. The AIM-9M is almost as capable. It's a supersonic air-to-air missile capable of reaching speeds of Mach 2.5. It's not quite as powerful as the AIM-120C. It also can't travel as far, with the missile having a range of between 10 and 18 miles. However, its annular blast fragmentation warhead explodes to create multiple pieces of metal shrapnel that shred through a target. Add an infrared homing system into the mix, and the missile is a great choice for dealing with incoming Russian cruise missiles at closer range. Finally, the AIM-9X is the newest variant of the US Sidewinder missile and a distinct upgrade over the AIM-9M. It has the same range and speed as the AIM-9M, along with the same 190-pound weight and an infrared homing system. However, it's built with smaller fins and fixed forward canards, both of which improve flight performance. Add a new jet vane steering system, which improves post-launch agility, and you get a missile that's even more accurate. That trio of defensive options have proven themselves capable of taking out cruise missiles and drones several times in Ukraine. However, it's the attacking capabilities of the F-16 that present the latest threat to Russia. Now that Ukraine has received more F-16s, it's growing more confident in sending them out on the types of sorties the interviewed pilot describes. As Euromaidan Press points out, Ukraine can now switch from purely defensive missions to offensive assaults designed to take out Russian targets. It can also now do it at a much faster pace than was possible before the F-16s arrived. Ukraine prepared well for this, the outlet says. Over the past few months, it's launched hordes of drones and missiles targeting Russia's anti-air missile launchers, radars, and electronic warfare systems, essentially clearing the skies over its key Russian targets so its F-16s are free to take on more offensive roles. And it's been taking advantage of that in Kursk. The Russian region was subject to a Ukrainian counter-invasion that saw Russia lose 93 settlements and around 450 square miles of territory in August 2024. It's since become a key battleground in the Ukraine war, with Putin desperate to push Ukraine out to remove the negotiating leverage that comes with controlling a piece of Russian territory. Euromaidan Press says that Ukraine has been using its F-16s to go on the offensive in Kursk. They were recently involved in airstrikes on Russian military positions, infrastructure, and headquarters in Kursk, dealing significant damage and sabotaging Russian efforts, working in tandem with Ukrainian MiGs, the outlet says. That's an example of what the combined sorties the interviewed pilot says are possible now that Ukraine has F-16s. It also shows us that Ukraine is increasingly using its F-16s to conduct ground strikes. That's something that wasn't possible for Ukraine before. Its MiG-29s struggle with any targets that aren't in the air, and its various Su jets simply weren't good enough to counter Russia's aerial defenses. The F-16, with its improved versatility, is giving Ukraine more options. Militarny highlights this by noting that there are now multiple images circulating of Ukrainian F-16s sporting these precise aerial bombs, including small diameter bombs, or SDBs, and joint direct attack munitions, or JDAMs. Starting with the SDBs, these are all-weather bombs that weigh 250 pounds and are classified as guided munitions. The bombs use the Global Positioning System, or GPS, to both track and reach their targets, with GPS also providing real-time data while the bomb is in flight to ensure it touches down where intended. Ukraine's F-16s are capable of employing an entire SDB system, which is a smart carriage that can carry up to 4 of these powerful bombs. Once launched, an SDB can hit and damage practically any high-priority stationary or fixed target. Here we see the difference between the F-16's offensive and defensive loadouts. The AIM missiles discussed earlier are all high-speed weapons designed to track and take out other high-speed weapons. SDBs, on the other hand, hit targets on the ground with devastating force, just as we've seen in Kursk. The bombs have a range of about 46 miles, which may explain the combined sorties Ukraine is carrying out. Its Soviet-era jets can fend off any incoming threats to an F-16, with help from the US-made jet's superior tracking systems, allowing the F-16 pilot to get in close enough to a target to drop its SDBs. Best of all for Ukraine, SDBs are plentiful and cheap. The US Air Force currently has 24,000 of these powerful bombs, along with 2,000 of the carriages used to hold them, and it's capable of producing them at a low cost of just $40,000 per unit. Assuming Ukraine maintains its relationship with the US, there's a good chance that more SDBs will arrive in the country, which raises its F-16 attacking threat even further. Then there are the JDAM-ER glide bombs. An improvement over the base JDAM, a JDAM-ER has an extended range created by the installation of a special wing kit. This allows it to travel up to 50 miles, which is triple the range of a standard JDAM, at an additional cost of just $10,000 per unit. The bomb was introduced into the US military in 2015 and, as Yuri Inat explains, it's deadly to Russia's forces. These bombs are slightly less powerful but extremely accurate, he says, when comparing JDAM-ERs to Russia's own FAB glide bombs. I would like to have more such bombs for success at the front. Right now, Ukraine doesn't have many JDAM-ERs. The US has supplied some, with one official claiming it had sent enough to do a couple of strikes. Still, the bomb provides more options to Ukraine and, when combined with SDBs, can do serious damage to any fixed Russian positions. This combination of offensive and defensive capabilities highlights why Ukraine has achieved so much success with its use of F-16s since they started arriving in August 2024. However, there's still one thing that Ukraine is struggling to do with its US-made jets: take out Russia's glide bombs. Our main focus right now is on Russian use of guided aerial bombs, says the interviewed Ukrainian pilot we mentioned earlier. Not all directions are fully covered, but we do our best to complete missions in these areas. We understand that we cannot get close enough to destroy the carriers of these bombs, but a complex effort is underway. In other words, though Ukraine is getting more daring in terms of using the F-16's offensive capabilities, it's still not quite confident enough to pit its F-16 pilots against Russia's pilots in direct aerial combat. However, it's coming up with other tricks, which include electronic warfare measures to disrupt the operations of these bombs, optimizing the electronic warfare environment, and enhancing the detection field for both the carriers and the guided bombs themselves. Who knows? As Ukraine receives even more F-16s, along with the munitions needed to enable them to confront Russia's fighter jets more directly, we may soon start hearing reports of how Ukraine is using its F-16s to tackle the Russian glide bomb threat. But for now, it's focused on taking out cruise missiles and drones, in addition to running bombing sorties against Russian positions. But what do you think about how Ukraine is using its F-16 fighter jets? How will the arrival of more in the future impact the war? And where do you see Ukraine going next as it battles with Russia for aerial supremacy? Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and remember to subscribe to The Military Show for more commentary on the latest developments in the Ukraine war.